Welcome to the podcast that brings you high voltage, intriguing information, as well as electrifying conversation on all topics current, past, and yet to be. This is Phase to Phase.
The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence.
I've been having these weird thoughts lately.
Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakens.
Here are your hosts, Marcus and Drew.
Today we're going to talk about a man, an important man.
A mysterious man.
A mustachioed man. It is not an exaggeration to say he's responsible for your way of life. And that man...
Technologically speaking.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that man is Nikola Tesla.
Ooh, yeah.
He's been fictionalized in books. He once teamed up with Superman, and he subsequently also fought Superman. He's been played by both Ethan Hawke and David Bowie.
David Bowie.
He's in Disneyland. You can find him there. He's in a rock band.
I think he takes tickets at the door, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right.
Or maybe he's in the ticket costume.
No, he's buried underneath the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, word, in like a mausoleum under the Pirates of the Caribbean.
He's in a rock band. Oh, no, that rock band was named after him.
He's also a car, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. He is a car. He's manifested himself into a car.
So he's like a transformer, basically.
Right. He's in several video games. You may have seen him in Fallout or maybe Assassin's Creed. And my favorite example of him being in video games is one called Tesla versus Lovecraft, where you actually play as Tesla and fight
H.P. Lovecraft.
Lovecraftian
monsters and ghouls and
yeah.
shit. Sounds awesome.
He held over 300 patents.
Damn.
And there's a super fascinating dude. And
Giving Einstein a run for his money.
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Einstein was once asked by a reporter, how does it feel to be the smartest man in the world?
He said.
And he said,
Ask
I don't know,
Nikola
ask
Tesla.
Nikola Tesla, which is pretty baller, dude. I'm not going to lie.
So,
Let's just jump right in. Who is this guy?
Okay.
There's so much to know about this individual.
There is a lot.
And how come we don't know about this guy? How
Well-
come nobody's ever heard of Nikola Tesla? You said he's responsible for our fucking technological way of life. How come I've never heard of him like in school, Marcus?
Well, there's been a bit of fuckery going on throughout his life, as
Yeah, a
we
little,
shall see.
yeah.
I had another idea. When was the first time you heard of Nikola?
That's a fucking fantastic question for right now. When did I first hear of Nikola Tesla? Actually, I know exactly when, dude.
Okay.
I haven't even thought about this until just now.
Okay.
Do you know the game Command and Conquer?
Yes.
Do you know the version Red Alert?
Yes.
Yeah, where it's about like where Einstein goes back into the past to remove Hitler, but it ends up having these unintended consequences where the Soviet Union allows to run unchecked and rampant or whatever, right? And within that game, there's a stationary defense turret thing you can like place to guard your base,
Right.
For the Soviets rather.
Just
called the
sparks
Tesla
electricity?
Coil. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it shoots electricity or whatever. And I remember playing it as a kid because my brother introduced me to the game, my older brother. And I remember thinking like, this is so dope, blah, blah. And I'm like, what is a Tesla coil?
Yeah.
And he's a big nerd, right? He knows about all that shit. And so he was just basically explaining to me kind of what it does and stuff. And I'm like, well, why is it called that? He's like, oh, that's the guy who invented it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But that's it, dude. That was the first moment
That's
I had.
interesting.
And only until way later in my life, into maybe my late teens, early 20s, did I fucking discover the sheer vast like magnitude of his contribution to society.
Same. It's funny you say that because I had the same thing. Like I learned what a Tesla coil is before I learned who Tesla was.
Yes, I learned what a Tesla coil was way before I learned who this guy was.
Yeah, which is interesting because that's not as cool as they are. That's not really even his biggest contribution.
Not even close. Yeah,
as we shall see. But
well, I think it's because it was so super unique.
And a little bit scary.
And a little bit scary and mysterious. And we love that shit, right?
Yeah.
As
and it's
human
cool
beings.
to look at.
Fuck yeah, it
They're
is,
cool.
dude.
People still use them just for various, light
Even just
shows,
for shows.
or just
yeah,
cool,
exactly, dude.
cool
just because it
experiments.
looks awesome to see like 50,000 volts running through somebody and not cooking them.
Right. All right. So, I'm taking the reins on this bad boy. So,
just don't put us into a ditch, bro.
turn down the lights and
Ooh. Hey.
get your towels.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I'm saying?
News is coming on. Draw the lights, baby.
So Tesla was born in July of 1856. It is what is now Croatia.
July 10th, if I'm not mistaken.
So here's the thing. When I'm researching Tesla, there's a lot of... He's kind of a mysterious dude already.
For sure.
And there's, you'll read conflicting reports of, even things like quotes that should be, definitive or even dates that'll be that should be pinned down.
Yeah.
So you'll have to forgive me if any information you come up is slightly different from mine. But
me too. We're going to go ahead and give that general disclaimer to the
But
audience.
I've heard July 9th or July 10th, so I don't know. Because a lot of the things...
Maybe it was like a leap year, and like, the 9th didn't come by that time until the
Or maybe
10th
they didn't keep good records over in Croatia.
Right.
So yeah, I was born in what is now Croatia, but he is of Serbian descent. His father was a priest, and he wanted him to join the priesthood.
Right.
But he got his scientific interest from his mother, who actually invented some household appliances.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Even though she was uneducated.
His genius always goes overshadowing other people.
Behind every great man, there's a great mother.
Greater mother. Yeah, for real.
I just imagine... It's kind of funny thinking about imagining Tesla as like a squeaky teenager. You're like, no, Dad, you just don't get it. Like, I'm gonna...
AC power is way better than DC. You just don't get it, dude. 3-phase is the way to go.
Magnetic field. God, you don't understand me.
And he was, like, by all accounts, like an angsty, awkward teenager.
Yeah, he was very different. Some people have theorized that he might have been like a high-functioning autistic.
Yeah,
but, there's really no way to know.
No, of course not, totally.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's maybe kind of Asperger's-y kind of a dude that just wasn't really psyched on the social, like, faux pas of people.
And
you know what I mean?
As we'll see.
Shaking hands, looking in the eye, that type of shit. You know what I mean? And to be honest, dude, maybe that's what it was, but maybe just people are assholes, and he just was like, I'm not comfortable.
He's a foreigner in America in the turn of the century.
I'm not comfortable with talking to you really right now. I don't know you. Who the fuck are you? So who knows? So
Tesla showed brilliance and obsession even at a young age. He would recite books. He was very fond of poetry. He could recite a lot of poems, and he also memorized logarithmic tables. A giant nerd. He was often accused of cheating. He was able to do calculus in his head.
At one point, it was even rumored because of a conversation he had with his buddy that he could see three-dimensional
I will mention that.
Objects.
I will mention that.
Go ahead.
I can mention that now. If you want.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. You don't know what I've written down. So.
True, I don't.
It's all off the script. And feel free to interject with something that...
I'm sure I will, bro.
Okay.
You know me.
You know me.
Yeah, for real.
He studied electrical engineering in Germany and Austria and what is now the Czech Republic. I mentioned that his dad wanted him to join the priesthood, and there was actually an interesting thing where he developed, I believe it was cholera.
Yeah, he got really fucking sick.
Yeah, and so his dad sort of made a deal with him. It's like, hey man, if you get better, you can do your foo engineering, whatever.
All literally,
jazz.
pie in the sky engineering, like that's gonna get you anywhere in life. Evidently he fucking said that basically, like, bro, if you fucking please just pull through this thing and live, dude, I swear to God, I'll pay for you to go to college. To do whatever you want, basically, which back in the day, dude, if you're going to college, it's not like today. You know what I mean? If you're going to college back in the day, especially in Serbia, dude, you were like upper class. You know what I mean? Even though you kind of came from like a middle lower class or whatever, going to college was a big deal.
Right.
So it was evidently like super expensive. And so that was no small potatoes for his dad to, kind of acquiesce to be like, all right, like, maybe you're not going to follow in my footsteps, but at least you'll be alive.
While he was studying, he saw flaws in the existing DC motors. And he started obsessing over how to improve them.
Right, when he went to college, right, as like a snotty-nosed little like freshman or whatever, and these college professors or whatever, he's like talking shit to these college professors about like the inefficiencies of their like brand new technology, by the way, that is like blowing the minds of like everybody in the world. And he's like, yeah, that's shit, basically.
Yeah.
Which I'm not gonna lie. If you're like this like college
Isn't that how
person,
every college kid is?
Right, dude? Actually, fucking the phases actually get lined up with the covalent electrons, and then they push them down a highly
I read on Google.
Yeah, exactly.
You're wrong.
Right. Yeah, basically. So, there.
He actually ended up dropping out of school and developing a gambling addiction.
I did hear about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Probably because he was like obsessed with like numbers and shit, dude, and probably thought you could like game the system or whatever, and then he just kept losing.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because the house always wins, baby. To be a
so
lesson to you.
Throughout here, I'm just going to intersperse some fun facts. So here's your fun fact number one: Tesla was 6'4" as an adult. Pretty tall, especially around the turn of the century.
Thin individual.
So in 1881, he moved to Hungary, where he envisioned a rotating magnetic field.
Right, that's the three-dimensional vision he had with his buddy that he started drawing.
Yeah, he had a
shit in the
famous
dirt,
story. Yeah,
like,
where he was in the middle of reciting some poetry. He
like trailed off. And then
he had a sudden strike of inspiration. He grabbed a stick and started drawing stuff in the dirt.
Yeah,
not unlike Sam Witwicky in that documentary Transformers.
Right. Yes, that's right. I forgot about that. And I don't know how true all of this what I'm about to say is, but evidently he freaking was like having a conversation with his buddy, or was like paying attention to him and focusing on him or whatever, and then all of a sudden just kind of like reached out into the thin air and evidently like flipped the switch or turned a knob or whatever and said, no, look, I can just reverse it if I do this. And his buddy was basically like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And he's like, I have to go. I just invented three-phase power.
Yeah, it's like don't push the conductor around the field, push the field around the conductor.
Yeah, right, totally. Like, I don't remember what show it was or whatever, but I think it was Star Trek actually, when Q became like mortal and he's trying to tell everybody like how to move through space at like tremendous speeds, and he's like, just move space around you, and they're like, dude, we don't know how to do that. And he's just like, you guys are such idiots. Like, the only way to travel is to move space around you, not to move around space, you fucking cavemen.
Instead of moving length through time, you move time through length.
Yeah, exactly, dude. You just move time itself. It's so easy, and we're just like, we don't know how to do that, dude. Sorry. Like,
so while in Hungary, he developed plans for the induction motor, which he successfully finally built in 1883.
what is induction, Marcus?
I was hoping we could avoid the electrical talk.
No, we're gonna have to at least talk about it a little bit, dude, because people
can we
are gonna
talk
be
about can we talk about it later when I get into AC versus DC?
Yeah, of course we can.
Okay. So basically, what I'm saying there is he developed a way to actually utilize the rotating magnetic field to generate power.
Right.
And AC had been sort of theorized before, but there weren't any practical ways to actually generate it. And even like from my reading, even the DC generator still had to have a bit of like mechanical motion, either to like get them started or to keep them going or something.
Yeah, it needed to have an initial use of power to get it going.
Yeah.
And which was problematic, right? Because you're like, well, how do we get this thing started? Once it's going, then it's generating power, but how do we get that initial spark or whatever?
So he took a job working for the Continental Edison Company in Paris.
Yes, he did.
That Edison, that Thomas Alva Edison.
Ah, I've heard of that guy before.
The Wizard of Menlo Park. Of course you've heard of that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You've heard of him. In 1884, he sailed to New York City with 4 cents, a drawing.
Oh, no. He had money. You didn't hear what happened fucking on the way over?
No.
The ship had a mutiny, dog.
Oh, really?
Yes, dude. He was fucking robbed.
Oh,
they took
wow.
all his money, dude. They took everything, and they were fucking throwing people over the side. Like, it was bad, I guess. Like, it was a big fucking deal. So they robbed his ass, and they had 4 cents in his pocket and a letter from his fucking employer to Thomas Edison.
And he says,
that's all he had.
The letter said, "My dear Edison, I know of 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." He had some chains, a drawing, some calculations, a letter, and a dream.
And a pocket full of dreams.
Section 2, Coming to America.
I love that movie. Eddie Murphy?
All right, so Tesla was hired by Edison, of course, who offered him $50,000 if he could improve upon his DC dynamos.
Yeah, so he went to work for Edison at like
Directly.
the bottom, but like at the bottom of the
totem pole?
Of the totem pole, basically, or whatever. He didn't come in as like an engineer.
Right.
He came in as what did fucking he call his bottom of the muck rakers or muck sweepers or. Edison had a fucking derogatory name for the people at the bottom of his company.
Immigrants.
Basically.
They were called immigrants.
Basically, right? Totally. He started there with like sweeping and like monkey wrenching like part like maintenance of like the machines and stuff, like bullshit work for somebody like him, basically, or whatever. And evidently he like showed up in the offices of some of the engineers and even like possibly Edison himself with like, so you guys' plans for these fucking machines that I have to keep fixing.
Right.
How about you just fucking do this, dude? And then I don't have to fucking fix these machines anymore.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure all of them were like, who the fuck is this brand new
upstart?
Yeah, dude. Who the fuck does this guy think he is, dude? We've been working here for a long time and we've been doing things this way for a long time.
The book says this.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's not the picture what it says.
So, as I said, Edison offered him a bunch of money, and he of course fixed it.
Yes.
He delivered on his promise of making them better, but Edison didn't pay him. He snubbed him.
And how come? What was Edison's like, seemingly justified reason?
I'm not sure if this is what you're getting at, but he said something to the effect of, when you become a full-fledged American, you'll appreciate an American joke.
You'll understand our humor, basically.
Right.
You fucking business piece of shit, dude. Like...
And by all accounts, Edison and Tesla were very, very different people. They thought and acted in very different ways.
Absolutely. I feel like Edison had already been well versed in the field of business and all the different little things that go along with that. Whereas Tesla was fucking wet behind the ears.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In that regard or whatever. He had the brains, he had the capability. He didn't have the awareness of the environment he was in.
Yeah, and his lack of business savvy would come to bite him in the ass a few times
I
throughout
think
his
that's
life.
the reason
as we will
of
see.
his downfall, basically. Yep, exactly.
But even in the way that they thought, like Edison famously was saying, geniuses
90% perspiration and 10% inspiration.
Yeah. So Edison was also had a thing where he came up with 99 ways not to make the light bulb. So he was a fail till you make it. You know, just keep trying and failing and failing.
Trial and error. Right.
As Tesla was a lot more calculated.
Which is so inefficient. Yeah. If you think about it, it makes more sense. Yeah. Tesla was like of the other side of the spectrum, being like, well, no, dude, genius is actually 90% inspiration and 10% perspiration in the sense of like creating something. Because why would you want to
why would you spend all that energy
building something when you could just do it the right way, more efficiency with less effort, dude? Which makes perfect sense, even though it's like a little, up your own ass with, your abilities and stuff. Like, well, why don't you just make a new one? You're like, because not all of us have like a 250 fucking IQ, bro. Okay.
So Tesla ended up starting a lighting company, the Tesla Lighting Company. And after developing some improvements in arc lighting, he was taken for a ride by his investors.
So this was long after, though, he quit Edison. Yeah.
He's
all pissed. Edison. He was supposed to get $50,000, didn't exactly get it, even though he delivered on his promise to build Edison a more highly efficient motor.
And so, as we said before, he wasn't very business savvy, so he kind of got squeezed out of his own deal. Fun fact number 2: Tesla was a germaphobe.
Yeah, big time. Another reason why I didn't like to shake hands with people. Mm-hmm.
So after the lighting company fell through, he started digging ditches for $2 a day.
Which is brutal, dude, because I was reading up on the things of what the engineers make, and it's like $7 a day or whatever. Right. Which, don't get me wrong, is significantly better than $2 a day, but it's like, god damn, dude, you have this genius dude digging ditches for half the money that he's should be getting.
Luckily, word got around of his genius, and he got funded by A.K. Brown of the Western Union Company to actually build one of his AC motors.
The Western Union
Company?
The
Western Union Company.
Huh, okay.
There's a lot of interesting names that will come up through Tesla's life, and you're like, where have I heard that before?
Mark Twain.
Yes.
He's the only one I know, so I needed to throw it out there. I know. Ooh, teacher me. Miss Clifton.
Drew is 90% perspiration, 10% intoxication.
I think we can all agree it's the opposite, fucking 90% intoxication.
Yeah, so he got some money to actually build one of his Tesla motors. That was a lame joke because the company's called Tesla Motors. Anyway,
so he built a car.
So at this point, we must take a break and actually introduce an important player in Tesla's life. John Pierpont Morgan.
Oh, Mr. JP.
Also known as J.P. Morgan.
Who is this guy?
He was born in 1837. His father was a millionaire. He was born with a silver spoon. And he
directly in his ass.
He avoided the service in the Civil War by paying someone $300 to fight for him.
Oh, that's right, dude. That's also going to be a reoccurring theme in J.P. Morgan's life. As is a reoccurring theme for all rich fucking people.
Check this one out. So he bought some rifles and he sold them at I calculated a 528% profit. And they were shitty rifles. They were defective. Some blew off of the fingers of their operatives. But because he's rich and powerful, he wasn't found legally responsible.
Of course not. Not just necessarily because he was rich and powerful, because that piece of shit knew how to form a contract to alleviate him of any and all, liability or whatever. Not that it makes it right, but he's a cunning piece of shit.
And I will remind you, dear listener, that this was the era of the industrial titans.
Yes.
And he wanted to be...
Astors, the Rockefellers.
Yeah, J.P. Morgan wanted to be synonymous with an industry like Rockefeller with oil and Carnegie with steel.
He wanted to be like the richest person ever, and that was his mission.
Right. And he wanted to stick it to his dad.
Right? Don't we all?
Electric light at the time was seen as sort of a status symbol of the rich,
Right, because you had to obviously tremendous amount of materials went into providing electricity or whatever for people. Like they'd have,
especially DC.
Yeah, exactly. They'd have these DC generators that were like the size of like giant fridges posted up into people's
somewhere to put it,
dude. And it has exhaust and all that stuff, dude. Like, there's a famous. I don't know if we're gonna end up talking about this, but there's a famous like story involving J.P. Morgan installing a DC generator in one of the Astor's houses.
Okay.
Maybe it was a lady, a rich lady or whatever, and he fucked it up basically and didn't insulate the wires and burnt the fucking house down basically. And so she wanted to go back to like lamp.
Hey, DC is safe.
DC is super safe and it's efficient.
J.P. Morgan actually hired Edison to light up his house with some 400 light bulbs. 400 light bulbs in that fucking house. How big is this motherfucker? I know it's an old incandescent house, but still.
I'm sure it's an estate.
So while he was impressed with his work, he invests in Edison to create the Edison Electric Company. This naturally made him an enemy of Rockefeller, who was selling oil lamps.
Right. Exactly.
You don't want any of those plebeian oil lamps.
Right. It's gross and dirty and fire.
After patenting his designs, Tesla licensed them to George Westinghouse.
Yes.
Another name you might have heard. Who started to compete with Edison Electric Company. And thus began the Current Wars.
Right. Which is like a show on HBO, I think, now. Maybe
it's
a movie.
A movie with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Really want to see it. Looks fucking amazing. David Bowie.
Played Zod. Okay.
Oh, yeah. That guy's awesome. Yeah.
Anyway, so let's talk about AC and DC. So a lot of people don't realize that they're actually an Australian band. I'm actually more of a Bon Scott man myself. I think Dirty Deeds is probably their best work, but the executives botched the release in the States.
Radio like popular, dude. I'm more of like a fucking for those about to rock. That's kind of my jam instead.
Yeah, more of a Boris Johnson guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they have that like Aussie symbol or whatever, sense or whatever. Like you can't really understand what he's saying when he's talking, but god damn it, when he's singing. Beautiful.
So DC would require lots and lots and lots and lots of power plants because it can't travel very far.
Well, no. It's not power plants, right?
It basically is because you have to just put a bunch of generators everywhere.
Word.
So
okay.
Because AC allows you to step up. AC allows you to step up the voltage, which is good for long distance transmission because it minimizes the loss in the lines.
Right.
So therefore,
because if you're trying to push, like with DC power, if you're trying to push electricity, current, amps, through a small amount of volts, it's smaller voltage, I should say. It's less efficient.
Right. I got an easy metaphor for a lot of people to understand. If you think of like a radio signal, or I guess now you think of like a Wi-Fi signal, the farther away you get, the less signal you get.
Right.
It's the same with pretty much anything, electricity as well. So. By therefore amplifying the signal, right? Whatever. This is super oversimplification, but just for people to understand, you amplify the signal, you can get farther away.
I've heard I've heard another analogy that can help people understand it using water pressure, right? Yeah. That's usually the standard that people fucking use. Right. Like if you can turn up the pressure, you can push water further with less energy.
Right, with a smaller pipe.
Right, exactly. Right. You don't need a huge pipe to push all this water. If you just turn up the pressure and a smaller pipe that's like a fire hose rather than this big like 8-inch pipe.
Right. So Edison's DC has this giant pipe with a little bit of water, a little bit of water pressure,
whereas
and it doesn't go that far.
Yes.
By the time you're sticking there with your mouth open over the spigot,
you're just getting a little bit of drips and nothing. Yeah, exactly.
And so imagine if you were the guy that was supplying the water. And you had to put in these water pumps every 2 miles. Right. You'd be making a lot of money.
Shit ton of money. And also, J.P. Morgan owned all the copper in the world.
So
he was super psyched to be like, wait a minute. Are you talking about we're going to have to freaking put these like generators every square mile, basically, of the entire world in order to push your shitty DC fucking power everywhere? Well, that's just fine with me. That's just aces because I happen to own all the copper, which is the best, like, conductive, relatively the cheapest and most conductive, like, metal.
Cost-effective.
Most cost-effective, thank you, like, metal that we can use.
Therefore, motive comes into play.
Fuck yeah, it does.
Here's another fun fact. Tesla didn't have many friends, but one of his friends was Mark Twain.
Yes, indeed.
There's a photo that you can see of Mark Twain in one of his labs.
Favorite picture, dude.
Yeah. It looks like he's, like, peering into a crystal ball.
Right.
Did we get the AC DC thing? I feel like we don't need to go into the fundamentals. I mean, we can.
No, that's good enough.
Of the difference between the two.
I mean? That's good enough. People that don't know about electricity are going to accept that enough, you know what I mean, to just realize that, Edison's version of transferring power, i.e. DC, direct current, is far less efficient than Tesla's changed up version of AC power, alternating current, 3-phase power, where you're stepping up the voltage to push it a further distance, therefore using less material and energy to get your end result. So as long as everybody knows that that's basically the point of it,
more economical.
I don't think we need to get into like the nitty gritty of
magnetic fields and rotating
and magnetic fields,
rotors and stators and commutators. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Although induction. I would maybe mention what induction is.
Okay, so induction is the process of
basically magic.
It is magic.
It's magic.
Electricity gets more magical the more you think about it. It's
straight
crazy.
Up, dude. It's actually really simple, but at the same time, the deeper you dive into electrical theory, it becomes
You read electrical
insane.
Textbooks, they even just use a bunch of pictures. Like, they try to metaphorize it as much as they can.
Yeah, because they're like, I know this is
take
hard.
out your left hand, point your fingers like this. This is how it works.
So true, dude.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And Marcus and I happen to find this funnier than most because him and I have
Some
a
electrical
background
training.
in electrical
Hence
training.
the name.
And so, yeah. Phase, 3-phase, phase, 2-phase.
Anyway, so induction. So I don't think you can explain induction properly without explaining atoms.
Well, no. You
have,
don't even need to do that. You basically just need to discuss how electrical fields can transfer electrons.
Yes.
Across.
It can push
air.
It can push
across space, basically, without.
Okay, so you have a coil. Medium. You have a coil. A coil is just a
copper
conductor
coil
wrapped around itself many times.
Yes.
So the tighter you wind it, the stronger the magnetic field is generated when you push current
Not just
through
the tighter you wound it, but the more copper,
the more
copper you put around it, the
formula.
more conductive. Exactly, and it's all broken down. 3 times, the amount of electrons from that source. So you can step up or you can step down.
Right.
So for instance, if you have a whole bunch of coils on one side and less coils on the other, you're stepping down the voltage because less of the electrons could be absorbed into that material and vice versa.
Right.
I think. I mean, granted, we're not electrical engineers, so we're probably fucking this up a little bit, but I'm just trying to give you guys an understanding of what the fuck we're talking about and why the fuck it matters.
Okay. Let me try one more.
Totally.
Okay.
FYI, cut and splice any of this.
Okay. When you run a current through a conductor, a thing that conducts electricity, let's say, when you run a current through a conductor, it creates a magnetic field.
Correct.
Around it. Because induction is the process of
transferring
pushing electrons in somewhere else
through
the use of the magnetic field.
You're transferring from the electrons from one electronic field, magnetic field, to the other.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
You're influencing the magnetic field, therefore pushing electrons.
Right. At whatever
without
degree,
physically touching something else.
Which is fucking nuts to me, by the way. Like, how the fuck does that happen?
Yeah.
Like, wait. So in a nutshell, that's 2 idiots trying to discuss what induction is for you.
We can definitely put some interesting links of either demonstrations or explanations because it's freaking fascinating.
It's highly interesting. I highly recommend people checking this out.
Yeah, so Edison was going to make multiple monies, and so he began a smear campaign against AC electricity, claiming that it was unsafe.
Right, because he's a direct threat to his Tesla is a direct threat to Edison's business. Yeah, because Edison wants DC.
Yep.
Tesla wants AC.
Yeah, and I believe in the fake news episode we talked about this a little bit, where Tesla was electrifying animals.
News.
Well, that was
Tesla
fake news, right?
Yeah, I think so. And if we didn't talk about it, it absolutely should fall under that category.
Right. So Edison was famously electrocuting animals, probably most famously an elephant. But there was also a little thing called the electric chair.
Yep.
A little bit of backstory here. In the late 1800s, execution was mainly done by hanging. The state of New York was looking for some alternative methods because it was too slow and painful to watch and whatnot. And we were running out of rope, frankly.
You see the prices of rope these days? God damn.
After one of Edison's demonstrations in which he electrocuted a dozen animals with 1,000 volts. Now,
and just so
keeping in mind, household voltage is mostly in the 100 to 120 range.
And industrial voltage is like all the way up to like 480, and well, it gets higher actually, but like 420, 480, 470. That's kind of
that's
like
the
as
utilization
high as we go,
point.
kind
Yeah,
of.
but for like transmitting, they go up to much
way
higher.
higher. Yeah, exactly. But as far exactly like you were saying, for utilization, the
But
average
the
is like
average-
between 400 and like 470 and fucking like 120 or
Right.
whatever, or
Even
110.
Yeah. So the point is, it's super ridiculously high.
Yeah, way higher than you would ever fucking need to do to power almost anything.
And the layman of the day definitely wouldn't really know that.
Of course,
'Cause you
especially
can't
since
see it.
electricity is like magic.
1,000.
Like,
When you look at electricity, 1,000 volts looks the same as 2 volts.
yeah,
Like you can't
exactly.
see it.
Exactly.
You wouldn't
Which kind of is weird for the industry of electricity, of electricians rather, is that you're
Label your
dealing with this, right? But you're dealing with this thing, electricity, right? This thing
Can't
that
see.
you can't see, you can't smell, you can only feel it when it kills you, basically,
Right.
or when it shocks you, right?
Yeah.
When it fucking hurts.
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes, dealing with that kind of has at least a realm of like mysteriousness about it. Like I know a lot of people that won't touch anything electrical because it's so foreign to them.
Yeah.
That they have like,
Which is the right thing to do.
yeah,
Right
absolutely,
attitude.
bro. It's like fire. You
Yeah.
know what the fuck it is? Don't touch it, dude. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Just start throwing stuff on it.
Right. Let me pick up this gun. Oh, which way does the bullet
Yeah,
come?
exactly. What's this thing? The trigger?
Okay, so Edison pushed them naturally to select AC power because AC should be killing people, and he wants that to associate this bad image
Right, for
and
his smear
dangerous
campaign. Right,
thing
right.
with AC. So he set up a demonstration where he put animals inside the chair and use
And did it with a person too.
eventually, yes.
Yes.
But he would start with low voltage DC and gives them a gentle little shock.
Yeah. See, it doesn't do anything.
And
now
then-
watch this.
And then he would switch to high voltage AC.
Like insanely high voltage
Yeah,
AC.
and totally kill them.
Mm-hmm.
The person heading the committee that was responsible for selecting the design of the new electric chair was also on the payroll of Edison's company.
No,
So you'll
no
be
conflict
shocked.
of interest there.
You'll be shocked, pun intended, to know that they selected AC power. So remember, George Westinghouse is the person that Tesla licenses patents to for his for the AC production.
Okay.
For the motors and
Because at this point, he's looking for funding, and he knows he can't get it from Edison, who's a two-bit cunt who already fucking
he
took
wouldn't want
shit
to
from him.
anyway.
Of course not. He's already been fucked
Right.
over, so...
So Westinghouse refused to sell his generators to prisons because he didn't want to kill people with that. And Edison said, "Oh, I'll sell you some." He illegally provided them, and I'm wondering how that worked. Like, did he purchase them for himself or through somebody else, and then repurpose them to use them for his demonstrations?
Are you talking about Edison still?
Yeah, because Tesla and Westinghouse had the patents.
Right, so Edison wasn't allowed to use
Right,
the
so-
AC system to fry this fucking guy as a demonstration of AC power's unsafeness.
Yeah.
He actually totally illegally used...
Right, and I'm just wondering, did he buy them under a front of using them for something else?
No, probably
Or
not. He probably
purchase
just-
them from
He
somebody?
probably just straight up used
Or
them.
straight
because
up,
fucking,
just
or
used his
he just-
ideas,
yeah, he
built
just-
it himself?
Good
I don't
call.
know.
Good call. How did he get his hands on that or whatever?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I couldn't really find out that
That's a good
information.
question. I don't know. Either way, he was not allowed to do that.
No.
Legally, he was not allowed. And
So-
Tesla could have sued his ass or whatever. But again, because he wasn't as business savvy as, say, his rivals, just kind of let it go.
So Westinghouse actually funded appeals for the prisoners that were sentenced to electrocution. He didn't want any of that going on.
Can you imagine?
Citing the Eighth Amendment, of course.
Yeah,
for
cruel and unusual.
Edison testified, however, that it was quick and painless, and the state won the appeals, so they fried.
Fucked up.
Edison got a great PR victory when the term being Westinghoused
Right.
took hold.
You piece of shit.
So electrocution by the
Smear
death of
campaign,
electric chair
hardcore, yeah.
came to be known
Which
as
is like
being
the most
Westinghouse.
scrupulous commercial business thing you could possibly do. You know what I mean? It's like if people started getting fucking fat and you're like, oh, you got McDonald's, bro.
The first human demonstration of the electric chair
hoping you were
actually
gonna
went
talk about this.
horribly wrong.
Yeah, it did.
One of Edison's lackeys used an illegally obtained Westinghouse generator.
Exactly.
And he probably hooked it up incorrectly.
I'm sure.
So instead of dying quickly, he was slowly cooked from the inside.
Yeah, they kept stepping up the voltage to see which one would be the one to kill him, and they did it like 5 times, dude, before this poor fuck died, dude.
So another fun fact, remember how I said AC is cheaper? So one big victory...
It's cheaper because of the material, right? And also the energy and stuff. It's
the
more
way
efficient.
it's generated,
Yes.
the way it's transmitted.
Everything about it is better. It's more efficient, yes.
especially when you make it three-phase, which
Right.
we'll get into. So one big victory for AC power was the contract for lighting the first World's Fair at the turn of the century, where Westinghouse undercut General Electric. Hey, another name. General Electric is the company that absorbed the Edison Electric Company.
Right.
That's a whole story in and of itself, but
With the funding they got from Morgan and all
they
those
undercut
cunts.
them by $500,000.
Yeah, like a third of their costs.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea of how
or
much
like 25%
more cost
of their
effective.
costs, like insanely better, significantly cheaper.
Right.
What was the problem though?
The problem? For what?
For the lighting, for Tesla's lighting of the World's Fair.
I do not know.
Well, the problem, you see, came from when Tesla won the bid, and Edison being a like, well, I'm gonna take my ball and go home, fuck you, like type of guy, was like, oh yeah, what are you gonna light it with? Light bulbs? Oh, that's weird. I'm the only one who makes them, dude.
Right.
And guess what? You can't use them, so fuck yourself. And Tesla was like, huh, okay. So he fucking took the light bulb that Edison had created, which was the screw-in incandescent bulb or
heat
whatever.
lamp.
Right, with like bamboo filaments and shit. We had to like
Waste
screw it
so
in.
much power.
It's
Gets so
fucking
much power
ugly.
gets
It's gross.
lost in heat.
Exactly. And we all see it because it's the one where you screw it in. It has the bottom screw and all that stuff. Tesla, and all of his fucking genius, took the exact same design, cut the bottom off. So he cut the little screw part off, right? Took the filament out, put a rubber stopper in the bottom, cheap as fuck, right? And then through the rubber stopper, poked two electrodes with a, like a carbon filament or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it wasn't bamboo. It was different than Edison's version or whatever. Therefore, making the carbon filament that he used or whatever, lasted like twice as long.
Oh, I'm sure.
And burned for, you know what I mean? And like used like half the energy or something like that or whatever. So,
and I read figures that there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 to 200,000 bulbs. So.
Which is nuts, dude. Well, because they were like lighting up all of like, was it like Buffalo?
Chicago.
Or was it Chicago? It wasn't New York? Okay, maybe it was Chicago. Yeah, some big ass city,
Right.
with a lot of light or whatever. So yeah. So basically, and this is something that Tesla did over and over again, where he would reach a hurdle, and then rather than just using the easier way of somebody else's device or whatever, or somebody else's patent, he was like, "Well, I'll just invent something else that's better."
Yeah.
And that was routine for him.
Right. The other thing is, can you imagine? I think about this quite a lot, actually. Can you imagine what it must have been like for just the average person to see electric
light bulb, dude? I kind of can't.
And think about the effect.
Like magic, dude.
And think about the effect that electric light has had on our lives. Like,
it's hard to think about it.
We can have graveyard shifts,
dude.
Now.
Right?
We
no,
can...
for real. You can do anything now. Think of this poor cunt that's fucking sitting, washing himself in lukewarm, tepid water in the dark, lit by candlelight, thinking to himself like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just snap my fingers or, flip a switch and I could just see everything here and not have to worry about
with like the light of the sun,
fire and and smoke in here and clouding up my shit. And also, would it be dope if, the water that I'm sitting in right now to bathe myself wasn't like, heated by sitting over a pot over the fire for like 6 hours before I poured it in and then had to like acclimate to the water and stuff like that. And sure enough, dude, this is exactly what fucking has changed or whatever, which is so simple to us. And it's like an everyday thing, but dude.
Super taken for granted.
Super taken for granted, dude. Can you imagine living in a house with lamps? Everything would smell like shit.
You know what else gets to me?
Everywhere. You know what I mean? Everybody would be blind because they're fucking,
street lights.
Can't see. Like, oh, dude.
Somebody had to go around and light the lamps.
There was a whole crew of people that had to go around with like ladders and shit to be like, oh, this is my district. I light up downtown. That's my jam. That's what I do.
Okay, here's another one. As a kid, Tesla imagined generating power from Niagara Falls. And about 30 years later, he actually accomplished that goal. He designed one of the first hydroelectric plants in the U.S. It went online in 1896 and was viewed by many as the death knell for DC power.
Right? Which is hilarious, too, because, like, here's this guy who's fucking given all this, like, ability to generate power, and rather than him being like, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and build a coal fucking power plant, and we'll just have coal delivered here, and we'll burn it and throw that shit into the atmosphere. He was like, wait a minute. Let's go to a place where naturally occurring energy is happening off the fucking charts, dude. Yeah, all the time. And just siphon out of that shit, dude. Genius. He was like the first green, like, thinking individual.
So the Niagara Falls Commission was headed by Lord Kelvin.
Canadians. Oh, sorry.
Who was actually skeptical of AC until he saw the demonstrations at the World's Fair.
Wouldn't you? Like, yeah.
Among the investors of the project were W.K. Vanderbilt, Lord Rothschild, and one J.P. Morgan.
I don't know any of those names. None of those three names are important in American life whatsoever.
What is up with the name Lord?
I am Lord. La, la, la.
Yeah. How do they earn that?
Oh, I don't know, but I'm sure they pay off some fucking rich cunt somewhere that fucking...
It's not like Sir, right? You don't get knighted.
No. Bro, you're talking about a time when people were basically like a lower class and like subservient, and like if you were like a landowner that held some amount of status, then I think, and also happen to rub shoulders with like royalty, I think that just makes you a lord or whatever. I'm sure there's some sort of like definition or whatever, like specifically or whatever. So
all this competition was very costly for Westinghouse and Edison, but Westinghouse didn't have like the big prior victories that he didn't have a foothold, and
Edison's more established
and rubbed elbows with the lords.
Yeah, word. Love that band.
So because of the competition, Westinghouse kind of begged Tesla to give up the royalties he was receiving from all the licensing.
Yes.
And Tesla, being grateful to Westinghouse because he didn't sell them out like some other...
Like all the other cunts that fucking... Yep.
He obliged and actually sold him the patents.
Right.
Which probably would have made him stupid rich.
Right. So instead of fighting this thing, he was like, you know what, dude? I'll invent some other shit. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of lame because he should be recognized and paid for his fucking work.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in America. That's supposed to be what we're about. Like meritocracy. Like.
So just to highlight, the original deal that he got with Westinghouse was $60,000 for the patents, $5,000 in cash, and he was going to be paid $2.50 for each horsepower sold.
Right,
which is equivalent to 745 watts for those nerds who are paying attention. But yeah, that's ridiculous. He got royalties.
50 grand or 60 grand back in the day is like $1 million today, I imagine. I mean, I'm sure you could probably calculate that out to like real monies or whatever, but it was walking around money basically.
But $250 for each 745 watts, that's a George Lucas type of deal.
Like, right, dude?
It's like, genius.
Yeah, totally. Well, because he was finally like, hey, I'm going to get mine, dude. Like, yeah. But then he didn't.
Fun fact, Edison conceded years later that AC was superior, and he actually thought so all along. He was just going along with it.
Which actually, I partially believe. I partially believe
that
he
knew
Edison
that,
but he was just such a stubborn piece of shit that he was just like,
he wanted his money.
He wanted to win.
Yeah.
He wanted to fucking win, dude. And it was worth more to him to have a system that was super inefficient, because people would have to continue to go to him for repairs, maintenance, for costs, and blah, blah, blah. So he's thinking like, fuck, he's seeing dollar signs, right?
Same thing as the modern car companies.
Yep, exactly. And fucking any company.
Until a man named Tesla would come and disrupt the industry.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, why are you guys doing it this way? This is so inefficient. They're like, well, yeah, but money. And he's like, well, yeah, but progression of science for humanity.
Chapter 3, the Tesla Coil.
Ooh.
In the 1890s, Tesla became fascinated with high frequencies.
Higher frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yes, of the electric kind. He experimented with building generators that could produce higher frequency, but they started to fly apart at these higher speeds. So he needed a better way to generate high frequency.
Fucking flywheel fell off and fucking hit my goddamn guy in the eye.
So enter the Tesla coil. Patented in 1891. It utilized polyphase power, which was another one of his discoveries.
Poly meaning multiple, and phase meaning phase.
That time that I made out with a man. Anyway. And basically, all you need to know for the sake of this is that 3 phases allows you to increase your cost effectiveness.
Yeah, it's just way more efficient. There's and
it's like having it's like having a super hot electrical 3-way.
He has the best kind of 3-way. Yeah, 3-phase is the best, most efficient way to transfer power, and we've talked about this in class and stuff. We're like, well, how come not a 4-phase and 5-phase? And when you're talking about a 300, no, you totally could, but it wouldn't change its efficiency. Yeah, exactly.
So the Tesla coil allowed him to not only reach higher frequencies, up into the hundreds of thousands of hertz,
yes,
but also higher voltages.
What is a hertz, real quick, Marcus?
Oh boy.
No,
Okay.
super easy. It's just.
So hertz is the amount of time that the sine wave crosses the 0 mark.
Right.
It's
per
the amount of
seconds.
times per second.
Yes.
Yes.
And so we go into 60 hertz phase.
In America, we use 60
Yes.
hertz.
What are they using in Europe?
50.
50. Yeah. Fucking weird Europeans.
And if any of you gamers out there, you probably heard of hertz in regards to refresh rate, which is how many times your screen changes in 1 second.
Yeah, it's just a ratio
How fast
of change. Yeah, exactly.
How fast the signal's going.
Totally. And so he realized if he steps that shit up hardcore, super hardcore,
You can do some interesting things.
Yeah, and it can travel through the body without hurting it whatsoever. Like he stepped up and without hurting it. That was terrible. Come on.
So these
that was low hanging fruit there, Marcus.
These higher frequencies allowed him to make some really cool discoveries like neon and fluorescent light. And he also experimented with X-rays. In fact, he took the world's first X-ray photo.
Word.
Though he didn't really know it at the time.
A lot of his inventions actually were a lot like that.
I mean,
going like,
a lot
wow,
of inventions
this new
are.
thing. And then like 10 years later, like, yeah, you can use this for
you can
this.
use that
And
for
he's
that.
like,
Oh.
Cool. Didn't even know.
So in 1890, he had a eureka moment when he managed to light a vacuum tube wirelessly through the air. This discovery led to his next big project. Unfortunately, he had a big setback when his lab caught fire in 1895.
Yeah. A lot of people are wondering, like, well, what happened? You know, like, maybe this is...
Edison set the fire.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But, like, let's be real, dude. The lab was made of wood, and he was dealing with electricity.
High amounts of
electricity. I'm happy enough to say that he just kind of
I'm kind of amazed. Honestly, I'm kind of amazed that Tesla didn't kill himself.
Dude, right? With all the shit that he did, you're just
Right.
like, bro, how
Super
did
uncharted
you not...
territory.
You didn't give a fuck, dude. He was like, yeah, check us out. Watch this. Watch me throw 50,000 volts from my gauntlet glove over to this Tesla coil 30 feet away.
And
unscathed.
And I think that kind of plays into why a lot of people he had this weird
thought he was a fucking wizard, basically. Like,
yeah, he had this
mysterious
reputation. He had this reputation. Because I just can't even imagine walking into a lab of this guy who's, he's like, oh, dude, you gotta check this out. Dude's a genius. You go in there and you've seen some crazy shit, just basically lightning flowing through.
Shooting out of his fucking hand, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you would be like, whoa.
And the way he talks about things, he talks about things like way into the future.
Right.
And you just...
And he's just super sure of things, too. Like, that's another thing that I heard. That, like, everything he would talk about, he was almost, like, perceived as, like, arrogant. Because he was just so sure that, like, this is what's up, dude. Like, and frankly, can you blame the fucking guy? He probably was sure.
He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Though he was not flawless, as we shall see.
As every
There was a limit to his genius.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Chapter 4, Tesla's radio rival.
Ooh.
In 1899, Tesla began working with financier John Jacob Astor, developing some more of his ideas, most notably ideas for sending electric power through the air. He famously could turn on and off light bulbs without actually connecting them to anything. And this gave him the nickname Uncle Fester.
Really?
No.
Oh, I was going to say, you totally had me, you piece of shit. Coincidentally, too, with the whole wireless transfer of energy, he had a fucking juggler at the World's Fair as a side attraction, juggling light bulbs that were not connected to anything, that were fucking lighting. When the guy would touch them with his metal glove that he was connected to with this, electrode.
So with Astor's help, Tesla built a large coil in Colorado Springs, where he experimented for about 9 months. The higher altitudes allowed room for his mind to expand. I wrote it like that, and I didn't even realize that's kind of plus, he could get super lit off the oxygen deprivation at those altitudes.
Whoa, dude. Fucking... Okay, check this out.
So he theorized if he could he could create sort of man-made lightning, basically.
Right.
He could conduct power through the Earth. He also correctly predicted the electrical properties of the ionosphere.
Right.
That wouldn't actually be proven until the 1950s.
How crazy is that, dude? He had the realization that, like, if you ionize the atmosphere, you can straight up charge it and hypothetically draw power from it. So you could walk away from whatever the source of the power is and presumably hold up like a metal rod or something like that or whatever, and then get wireless energy.
So, fun fact of Colorado Springs, it was here that Tesla claimed he received communications from other planets.
Ah, yes. And why did he think that?
He had some equipment, and it started going off in a weird
radio
sequence.
telescope, I believe,
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Well, in 1996, his experiment...
Wait. 19 what?
1996.
Okay.
He wasn't alive. This was after he died.
I was going to say, I was like, this sounds like you're messing up here.
His experiment was replicated, and it was concluded that the signals actually came from...
Hold on. What did he get from the signals? Before you find out what it was, why did he think he was receiving transmissions from intelligent life?
From what I read, it was because it was like a sequence almost.
Yes.
Do
you remember what the sequence was?
Like 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Why is that significant? Because 1, 2, 3 are the first primary numbers, right? He was also raised as a religious person because his father was a priest, right? Yeah. What is the number that fucking...
The Holy Trinity? Is that what you're getting
dude. At? The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, the Holy Trinity, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And also, coincidentally, do you know what the letter that he first... Excuse me, do you know what the first message that he transferred transatlantically with that Marconi motherfucker...
Stop killing me.
Sorry, god damn it, but this is relevant to the free thing.
Go ahead.
Just that the first successful transmission of a transatlantic radio communication was the pushing of the letter, the receiving of the letter S, right? Do you know how many dots or how many beeps the letter S fucking
in Morse
contains?
code?
Yeah.
Is it 3?
It is 3.
There you go. So in 96, his experiment was replicated. It was concluded that the signals that he received likely came from the moon Io passing through Jupiter's magnetic.
Really?
Yeah. So
I've heard different.
He was sort of right.
I heard that it was a pulsar that he was looking at, and the reason why he was getting the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 was because that is the electromagnetic resonance signature, right? Because everything, what Tesla discovered, everything has a resonance frequency. All matter, all energy, right? So yeah, that's why.
Typical pulsars.
Yeah, right. You know, out there just bleeping. 1, 2, 3. God,
all about me. It's all about me. Look at me. I'm a pulsar.
Look at me. 1, 2, 3. Jeez, get over yourself. But yeah, basically, they came to discover that it was some sort of naturally occurring phenomenon. Thank you.
Okay, so unfortunately, Tesla had a falling out with Astor, who was a guy paying the bills, and he had to seek some funding elsewhere for his experiments. Now, around the same time, the Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi. I'm sure I butchered that name. Nah. He was gaining steam in England working on wireless...
I think.
Well, there's a G, but I think the G is silent.
I'm not Italian, so you're probably right.
Okay. So he was working on wireless telegraphy.
Telegraphy.
Telegraphy, as in the telegraph,
yes,
but making it wireless.
That actually makes sense. I hadn't heard of that word until you just said it, and it took me 2 seconds to kind of decipher it. But
even when I read it, I was like, "What the hell is telegraphy?"
Fuck is telegraphy?
I typed it into Google like an idiot, and I was like, "Oh, telegraph."
Isn't that what Magneto's power is? Right? Telegraphy.
Marconi used a Tesla oscillator to send a radio signal across the English Channel. He would later claim that he didn't know that its design belonged to Tesla.
Fucking full of shit, dude.
In 1903, the U.S. Patent Office said of his pretended ignorance of the nature of a Tesla oscillator being a little short of absurd. Quote, the term Tesla oscillator has become a household word on both continents.
Totally.
So basically, fuck yourself.
Yeah, exactly, right? He was like, I didn't know that the Tesla oscillator... sorry, it's Italian. I didn't know that the Tesla oscillator belonged to the Tesla guy.
After Marconi successfully sent the first transatlantic radio message, Tesla said, Marconi's a good fellow. Let him continue. He's using 17 of my patents.
You 17 of the 24 pieces, dude. Of the 24 pieces that make up your fucking radio, dog, I own 17 of them, dude.
Yeah.
So, no big deal. That's fine. You go ahead. Nice little invention you got there, buddy.
However, as an Italian, Marconi was well connected.
Yeah.
As most Italians are.
Stereotype, jeez.
It wouldn't be a radio war without connections.
Word.
He was even financially backed by Andrew Carnegie and his old friend, Tom Edison.
Steel piece of shit. Yep.
In 1904, the Patent Office reversed its decision with no real explanation, and Marconi was credited as the inventor of the radio and subsequently made bank.
Yeah.
So,
good job, Marconi, but honestly, dude, fuck off. Come on, dude. 75% of your genius belongs to Tesla, dude.
And how crazy is that? The patent office is like, actually, you know how you were actually the real person who invented this? No, I don't think so anymore.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I've suddenly been changed my mind by a Mr. Jefferson and a Mr. Franklin.
Yeah, exactly. It suddenly changed my mind, objectively.
Fun fact, if you've ever seen the James Cameron documentary Titanic, Marconi was credited as saving many lives after that disaster with the technology that was installed on the ship.
Yeah, that's a load of shit.
And
not to mention with the Titanic or whatever, you know who else was on that?
Who?
John Jacob Astor.
Did he die on the Titanic?
He fucking absolutely died. You know why he died? I actually don't.
Because of the iceberg?
Because he drowned. Yeah, exactly.
So, Tesla was upset about this defeat, but in his mind, he had bigger fish to fry, as we will see.
As usual, yep.
So, however, when Marconi won a Nobel Prize in 1911, our boy Nicholas was rightfully pissed.
Yeah, that would kind of rub you pretty sour.
He sued the Marconi Company in 1915, but he didn't have pockets deep enough to fight it.
Tale as old as time.
So forget it, Nikola. It's Chinatown.
So fucked up, dude.
Silver lining here, though, the Supreme Court eventually would play like a professional Uno player and reverse the reverse. They upheld Tesla's claims, but this was months after his death.
Yeah, it's...
And the interesting about that, if you dig deeper, they were under pressure because the U.S. used Marconi's radio patents in World War I. So by giving the patents back to Tesla, they were no longer using his patents.
Oh, totally. So they'd have to pay him.
Right.
Because Tesla's dead, so who gives a fuck? So we don't have to pay him either.
Yeah.
But if we just say that Marconi didn't invent it or whatever, then we don't have to pay him either. Scot-free, go fuck yourself.
Neener, patent cheater.
Oh my God, dude. You underhanded.
But Tesla went further by applying those wireless signals to demonstrate the first remote-controlled machine.
Yes.
At an electrical expo in Madison Square Garden.
The boat.
And a New York Times writer in the crowd suggested the technology could be applied to remote-controlled torpedoes. What a great idea.
Weapons.
To which Tesla responded, "You do not see there a wireless torpedo. You see there a first of a race of robots. Mechanical men which will do the laborious work of the human race."
Holy shit, dude.
Holy shit is right.
Damn. I'm not gonna lie, dude. Of all the shit I knew about Tesla, never heard that, dude.
Yeah. He was big on the robots.
Which is hilarious because if you think about it, dude, this dude was thinking so far ahead that these dipshits were like, oh, you could use it for this. And you're like, bro, that's such primal thinking.
Small potatoes, dog.
Small potatoes, homie, dude. Like, you have no idea the fucking... Yeah, from what I heard, people were looking at this, like, wireless... remote-controlled boat thing, and they didn't get it, dude. Yeah. Which is hilarious. You're like, what do you mean you don't get it? Look, I can make this thing move without touching it, dude. You do that. Oh, I can't. Okay, thank you. Then fucking recognize my genius, you prick.
So,
and dude, that was literally drone technology.
Yeah.
First drone technology. What is this? 1899?
Yeah,
or
before even 1900. This is in
Jesus.
1898.
Listen, dear listener, this is going to be a reoccurring theme for Tesla's genius of people not recognizing what awesome things he's creating, and him going like, dude, this is so far beyond what you guys are trying to think about using this for that it's kind of making me like sick and upset.
And that's a great segue into my next point. So in June 1900, he wrote an article in Century Magazine called "The Problem of Increasing Human Energy." And I read a good chunk of this. It's pretty crazy. So in it, he talks about finding improvements in food production, access to clean water, the future of warfare, robots and automation, artificial intelligence, improvements in energy production, including renewables and batteries. Like he talks about like wind and solar, and even the coming dominance of aluminum, because that was kind of on the rise.
Right.
So here's an interesting quote from that article that actually kind of explains the way his mind works. And it kind of goes back to that thing you were talking about before. But this is in his own words, so it's kind of long, but here we go. "A long time ago, when I was a boy, I was afflicted with a singular trouble, which seems to have been due to an extraordinary excitability of the retina. It was the appearance of images which, by their persistence, marred the vision of real objects and interfered with thought. When a word was said to me, the image of the object which it designated would appear vividly before my eyes, and many times it was impossible for me to tell whether the object I saw was real or not. This caused me great discomfort and anxiety, and I tried hard to free myself of the spell. But for a long time I tried in vain, and it was not, as I still clearly recollect, until I was about 12 years old that I succeeded for the first time, by an effort of the will, in banishing an image which presented itself. My happiness will never be as complete as it was then, but unfortunately, as I thought at the time, The trouble returned, and with it my anxiety. Here it was that with the observations to which I refer began. I noted, namely, that whenever the image of an object appeared before my eyes, I had seen something that reminded me of it. In the first instances, I thought this to be purely accidental, but soon I was convinced myself that it was not so. A visual impression, consciously or unconsciously received, invariably preceded the appearance of the image. Gradually, the desire arose in me to find out every time what caused the images to appear, and the satisfaction of this desire soon became a necessity. The next observation I made was that just as these images followed as a result of something I'd seen, so also the thoughts which I conceived were suggested in like manner. Again, I experienced the same desire to locate the image which caused the thought, and this search for the original visual impression soon grew to be a second nature. My mind became automatic, as it were, and in the course of years continued, almost unconscious performance, I acquired the ability of locating every time and, as a rule, instantly, the visual impression which started the thought. So, what that sounds like to me, have you ever heard of synesthesia?
Yes, dude. Like, what is it again? Like, not
It's
words
when their
or
senses,
images?
it's when their senses kind of are linked together.
Word.
So you can have it in many different forms. The part of your brain that processes, for example, language, and the part of your brain, for example, that processes taste. So people can have synesthesia in different ways. So some people might report like tasting colors or seeing sounds. Yeah, so like this sounds blue to me or whatever.
Which, to like quote the average person, sounds fucking bizarre.
It does. It's very hard to imagine that sort of thing. But
it's like Ratatouille when he's talking about tasting like colors and shapes and stuff.
So a lot of artistic people have this, and a lot of everyday people have this, and they don't even really know it, because it's one of those hard things, like until you actually have a conversation with someone else, what it's like to
right, because you
have
only
the
experience
thoughts.
what you experience, and
Exactly.
therefore you have no like outside perspective of like what other people might perspective. Like it's that typical like stoner talk of like, bro, check it out. How do you know, man? Like that, what like I see and what I think is like green. What if like what you see, man, is like red?
Right.
But
we
all
just call it green.
Psychology, man, and society have like deemed that as green, right? But it's not, dog. It's fucking red, man.
Yes.
Joe Rogan.
The problem of other minds.
Right.
But one form of synesthesia actually has to do with what some people often call the sixth sense, which is proprioception, like your spatial awareness, your sense of space.
Yes.
And so a couple of good examples. There's one of the guys who reportedly has like one of the best memories in the world.
Yes.
He has that, in order to remember things, he kind of lays them out spatially in front of him and then kind of uses that.
Like in his mind,
extra
like
sense.
Three-dimensionally lays it out in his mind to help like set it up to where
help
he
him
can
remember things.
Right.
There's another podcast I listen to where this other guy, he can keep track of multiple pieces of music in his head simultaneously.
Damn.
And they've tested him, like they put him in an MRI machine. And it's fucking
That's like
fascinating.
Data from fucking Star Trek shit,
Right.
dude.
Right. Because I'm sure you've been in like a music zone where you walk in, like two different songs are playing, and it's just like it becomes kind of noise
when I would
to
DJ,
you.
should I be listening to dudes trying to fucking cue the beat
next tracks,
on exactly on cue?
Yeah.
And it'd be off. And
If it's
I
off,
could
it
pick it up,
bugs the
dude.
crap out
And
of you.
people are like, "Oh, this is great." I'm like, "It's a 16th of a beat off, dog. Can't you
Right.
fucking hear that?"
Yeah.
Like,
So he was keeping track of two pieces of music, and then they started pushing him. They're like, "Well, how many can you remember?" They got up to 4 different symphonies, and they stopped it, and they're like, "Okay, where in the symphony are you?" They started them at different times, and he's like, "Okay, at this part, I'm at this."
Right. Which is nuts, by the way, because symphonies have like super
intricate.
layered and intricate and detailed like different sounds and shit, obviously, or whatever. It's not like 6 sounds you're playing for like a techno song or whatever.
So the way he describes it is he has this 3-dimensional visual space of an orchestra in front of him. According to him, he can like zoom in on a particular player and like turn up that one or like change the tune.
Like some fucking Minority Report style where he's like touching things in 3 dimensions or whatever, like that are in his mind, and he's like you were saying, like he can focus in on certain things and then move over to some other thing and focus on that, like as if it's literally right in front of him.
Right. So I don't know if this is exactly what Tesla had, and there's really no way to know
that. Yeah.
But that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds to me like this dude straight up could see things in his mind it doesn't make any sense to them, but to the person experiencing it, it's so fucking simple. Like, again, it's like the Q thing that we're talking about. Just move space around you. You're like, it's so simple. You're like, dude, wait, I don't know how to do that, bro. My brain doesn't work like that, dog. I don't have a 250 IQ, Elon.
So yeah, that kind of gives an idea of a window into his mind and the way it works. I think it's super interesting if we can believe everything that he says, because it certainly would explain his ability to outthink people in a lot of ways as far as inventing things.
Yep. And why it wasn't that big of a deal for him to give up certain patents, because he was super confident that he could just,
Yeah, I mean, if his ability was to recall was as much as he claimed.
Were you saying that he had
total recall? And it's also interesting, he talks about, like, not only does he see the images in front of him, but, like, that images is, like, also linked to every other instance of that image, and, like, so he has these... It's like his mind is a computer database.
Totally.
Like, it just has all these tags, and you can just search one tag, and
they're all
then it comes up with this
to
web.
whatever is, like, general to that, like...
Chapter 5, Wardenclyffe.
Wardenclyffe, ja. We come down to the Wardenclyffe and have the schnitzel and the Hopenhafen and, fucking monkey cooking.
His next big idea was to create a worldwide wireless transmission network. Imagine this idea around the turn of the century. People don't even understand what the hell a radio
electricity
control
even is, let alone that it doesn't need wires and shit, yeah.
Tesla once said, quote, "When wireless is fully applied, the Earth will be converted into a huge brain capable of response in every one of its parts."
It's crazy because that's what the Earth is, dude. It's a big organism.
Gaia.
Yes, sir.
This was his vision. Quote, "As soon as completed, it will be possible for a businessman in New York to dictate instructions and have them instantly appear in type at his office in London or elsewhere."
So the internet.
Yeah, in 1900. Quote, "He will be able to call up from his desk and talk to any telephone subscriber on the globe without any change whatever in the existing equipment. An inexpensive instrument, not bigger than a watch, will enable its bearer to hear anywhere on sea or land, music or song, the speech of a political leader, the address of an eminent man of science, or the sermon of an eloquent clergyman.
Like all forms of information.
Delivered in some other place, however distant. In the same manner, any picture, character, drawing, or print can be transferred from one to another place. Millions of such instruments can be operated from but one plant of this kind."
Mind fucking blown. Because that is what we have today, is it not? You can dictate anything, and you can transfer any form of information, whether it be picture or sound or text, across the globe instantaneously. That's pretty badass, dude. Wearing a watch.
So remember that model citizen J.P. Morgan we mentioned earlier?
That upstanding salt of the earth young fellow.
Tesla thought it would be good to ask this guy for some money.
To build Wardenclyffe, right?
To build this...
Wardenclyffe, I believe.
Yes, to succeed in his vision.
Right.
So he secured that money by selling many of his communication patents.
Yeah.
Morgan reportedly was impressed by the article in Century Magazine that I mentioned earlier. And so with these funds, which is about $150,000, he constructed a laboratory called Wardenclyffe in Long Island, New York.
Yes.
So, on top of the communications network, Tesla also wanted to bring his wireless energy to the world. He wanted to have, quote, "a grip on the earth so that the whole of this globe can quiver." So construction began on a 55-ton penis tower next to his laboratory.
Robot penis.
It was 55 ton, first of all. 55 ton.
That's a lot of robot penis.
187 feet tall. Anchors in the ground that are about 120 feet long. And there was like the shaft that ran down the middle.
All right.
And there were 16 300-foot horizontal steel pipes.
Yes.
Underground that were linked to the transmitter.
So this is basically a massive Tesla coil.
Yeah, I mean...
Like, way bigger than anybody had ever seen, with like a little donut-y metal bit on the top.
That's a mushroom head on the top.
Yeah.
It's a penis tower.
It's a penis.
Everybody look at my penis.
Right? It's not a penis, it's a Tesla
and the things
coil.
that shoot out of my penis. To the entire world. I'm fucking the whole world right now.
Tesla was a sick fuck. I'm gonna fuck the whole world. What? You heard me.
Wirelessly. You don't even know what's happening to you, but I'm fucking you right now.
Like in his like later years or whatever, just kind of went nuts and just like, fuck the world, I'll do it. My big robot penis.
So, when constructing the central tower, as you and I know, tale as old as time, he ran out of money.
Yeah.
There was also a stock market crash at the time that increased the price of materials. J.P. Morgan denied him some more funding, and some believe it was because he realized there would be no profit in free wireless energy.
So that's what I was going to bring up is that, and this is something we haven't talked about yet, but Tesla had a penchant, shall we say, a habit of taking a contract and not really
working a little outside of the contract.
It happened every time. So every time he got fucked out of money, it wasn't 100% the other person's fault. What Tesla was kind of renowned for was somebody, an investor, coming up to him and saying, hey, check it out, bro. I want you to invent A, and I'm going to pay you, whatever, $50,000 for it or whatever, right? And he's like, all right, cool. And then he takes like a chunk of the money, like a preliminary cap of the money, let's say 10 grand, and then invents something else. Like not A, invents Z. Like not even close to A. Well, okay, let's just say Q, so it's like a little closer to A, but not quite. He invents something
vowel,
that is yeah, right. He invents something that is super useful, but the investor is basically sitting there going like, bro, what the fuck? What the fuck am I supposed to do with this, dude? Yes, this thing is awesome. Yes, it's badass. However, that has nothing to do with the contract that I fucking asked you to fucking do. So I'm kind of sitting high and dry, right?
It's better, yes?
It's better. You don't understand, you stupid idiot. So this was a continuously reoccurring thing that would happen. And the Wardenclyffe concept was evidently no different. So he got money. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I assume Morgan took a look at the tower, maybe was sent a photograph or something. He's like, what the fuck is this giant robot penis?
Pretty much.
I gave you money to cook my toast faster.
And this is not what I asked for. So what I remember off the top of my head is that J.P. Morgan gave him money to invent, I think this still had to do with the transatlantic communication of some kind, basically. And he's like, okay, cool. Give me some of that money. He builds Wardenclyffe, builds this giant fucking electrical Tesla coil that is basically, for his aspirations, is going to charge a like 200-mile radius or whatever it is area to ionize the atmosphere to do wireless energy transformation. Not even at all close to what J.P. Morgan was asking him to do, right? And gave him the money to do, right? So instead, he built this way doper thing. And as you just said, a lot of people speculate that as soon as Tesla told him, or rather, as soon as J.P. Morgan found out the real reason behind why Tesla built Wardenclyffe, J.P. Morgan had a fucking heart attack basically by saying like, wait a minute, dude. First of all, you took my money and built something completely different. All right, separate issue. That thing that you happen to build is gonna fucking put me out of business, you asshole, because I own all the copper mines in the fucking world, basically. Yeah. And you can't have a business where you're fucking mining copper and creating copper like wires for transference of electricity if you've just developed this method that's going to completely turn that shit on its head and completely remove any possibility of wanting fucking wires, dude. Wireless energy transfer. Yes, this is amazing, and this is going to like propel human beings into the next like phase of. But
where's my
energy.
Money?
Yeah, exactly.
But how am I supposed to get rich off?
Continue to be a fucking bazillionaire, dude, off of all this copper mine shit, which is so short-sighted to me, by the way. Which is like, bro, you can invest your money into other shit, dude. I'm sorry you spent all this money.
You can be the guy who brought this to the world.
Thank you fucking asshole. You can be the presenter of it, dude, and have Tesla in the background if you really wanted to. You know what I mean? But I think because of short-sighted greed, basically, when he found out what Tesla was doing, he was like, no, shut this down. Shut this down.
And one time that he replied to Tesla, he simply wrote, no.
Right, dude? It was just hilarious. It's like, go fuck yourself. Like, like, no. And also in a few days, I'm coming by to collect everything from your fucking lab, dude.
And it's pretty crappy because even though people were pouring money into Marconi, no fat cats wanted to mess with Tesla.
Yeah,
they just kind of wanted to steal his ideas.
Yeah.
So his laboratory closed in 1910. Fun fact.
Did that one catch on fire too?
No.
A separate one.
The old one. An old one in New York.
Didn't catch on fire.
Nope.
Okay.
Fun fact. Tesla was awarded the Edison Medal. The Edison
Fuck off,
Medal.
dude. Edison should be awarded a Tesla medal, you cunts. Like,
in 1917, the same year that his tower in Wardenclyffe was blown up with dynamite, dismantled, and sold for scrap to pay his debts.
Which is hilarious, dude. You're gonna like award me with this quote unquote award. Yeah, of the dude who is the biggest. Exactly, dude. Thank you. It's a slap in the goddamn face, dude. It's a backhanded slap. You know what I mean? It's like oh, we're giving you this award. How prestigious. And then the people who know
what's
about
it
it
called?
Like, the Edison. You're just like, fuck.
Some other of Tesla's ideas included an earthquake machine.
Oh my God, the resonance machine. Please tell me we're going to talk about this real quick.
If you want to, go ahead.
Just really
briefly.
briefly.
Take the reins.
So remember how you were talking about
Astor?
Mark Twain.
Oh, Mark Twain. Okay.
Freaking, he apparently was given a demonstration of the oscillating machine that was shaking shit so badly that like it was shaking like the apartment below him, and that by the time he like, oh, and also evidently he like tried to turn it off, but like he couldn't turn it off.
Okay.
And so he just grabbed a fucking sledgehammer and just started going to town.
Oh,
on this
damn.
thing. And basically, Mark Twain was super surprised. Matter of fact, a lot of people think that he had a little accident in order to, because he's so shocked. Like, well, I do believe I need to clean my brushes. Because basically what Tesla had figured out, that as we said earlier in the show, that everything, whether it's matter or energy, has a frequency. Because everything in reality is either energy or matter.
Right.
And his theory, which I think he was proven right based on the very small amount of knowledge that I have of the gentleman, that he could tap into any resonant frequency of solid matter and mimic it in the way of using like a, what was it? Like an extended arm with like a little weight on it.
Okay,
that
right.
spins around at certain frequencies and speeds and stuff like that kind of produce the oscillating effect. He could say, he said that if you found the right frequency, you could shake the world and split it in half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know if that's like true, but it just goes to the point of him being like, look, if we just tap into the right frequency of anything, dude, we can like drop a bridge.
Frequency, bro.
Dude, you're just on the wrong frequency,
frequency.
You know, you're just on like a...
I'm totally at a higher frequency.
I'm way higher, dog, than a frequency, dude. You just need to fucking, open your minds to three-phase power, man, and fucking... Yeah, totally. And basically, it was like a successful demonstration of using a like shoebox-sized oscillator that can shake anything. Like it can match the resonant frequency of any matter and therefore shake it to bits. And I remember seeing this documentary where they built one and they put it on a bridge and they found the right frequency and they like turned it up to that like intensity level and the bridge would just shake in the craziest like way where, I mean, it didn't shake it.
They found the brown note.
He said, basically, dude. Yes, exactly, dude. That is the perfect analogy.
So I forgot to mention this, but there was actually an incident where I believe it was when he was working in Colorado Springs. This is another just thing that I just think is so funny to imagine. Like, see this Tesla guy, this weird guy has a strange reputation up on the hill, creating lightning up there, and then suddenly, like, the power in your whole town goes out.
Yeah. What?
Like, he's having, like, this slamming rock concert up there, you know what I mean?
Just slurping all the power up, and all the townsfolk are like, oh, what the fuck is he doing? Up there on the hill, rocking out all the time. Sucking our power out of our fucking businesses. Why are you guys Irish with an Irish accent? I don't know, we just fucking immigrated here. Get off me back.
Another one of his ideas was a thought camera. Apparently he thought you could photograph.
What?
This look on Drew's face.
I've never heard about that.
Which
is crazy because, bro, I fucking used to think that was a thing you could do. One of my earliest memories, bro, is talking to another dude going like, hey, remember that yellow bird in the cartoons, whatever? And he's like, I don't know what you're fucking talking about. I'm like, just think about it. Just think about it. Okay?
There it is.
Like looking at him like, ready? Okay, go. And
he's like you guys were tuned to the same TV channel that was your brain?
Yes, dude. Like he could like peer into my brain. And I remember going like, just think about it, dude.
Why can't you just see what I'm thinking?
Why can't you see what I'm thinking? And he's just like, bro, you're fucking out of your mind, dude. What are you talking about, dude? This was long. This was like literally before kindergarten. Like,
so probably along the same vein as the earthquake machine, he thought you could create artificial tidal waves, which I suppose now you sort of can.
Yeah, that could make sense. Okay.
A supersonic airship, which is interesting because it was also supposed to be powered by his wireless power stations. So, like, instead of refueling, it would just beam some power.
You should have an electronic motor that just slurps up the power from.
Right.
Oh my God! You just stay in the air forever.
Perpetually, yeah.
Oh, that'd be dope.
Right.
Blimps. I don't trust them.
All right, so it's time now for the classic '80s movie epilogue. I'm not sure what kind of music we would put on this, but just imagine like these people, kind of like 2-second clips of them like moving or whatever, and then they freeze, and then like there's some text on the screen. Okay. So, J.P. Morgan went on to own Tesla's patents through expensive litigation, along with half the country's railroad. He bailed out the federal government twice, put his puppet into the Oval Office, created the first
Woodrow Wilson?
McKinley.
Oh, the other puppet.
He created the first billion-dollar company, pissed off the man who would then shoot his puppet, got sued by the government, joined 2 oceans, and closed down the New York Stock Exchange for 2 days after his death.
What an accomplished individual.
I know. His company went on to become the biggest bank in the U.S. through a merger of over 1,000 banks. And they placed themselves right in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis. So, just another friendly reminder that billionaires control the world. Moving on. The Marconi Company would go on to fight with the Navy, develop a near monopoly on radio communication. Here's a quote. "There is now nothing in the way of Marconi becoming the only system of commercial importance in the world."
Fuck off.
The Marconi Company became the center of international political conflicts and eventually became RCA and got caught in a decades-long legal battle with the patent office that I mentioned.
Forever, dude. Yep.
As far as our boy Tesla, Tesla's mental state began to deteriorate after Wardenclyffe.
Yeah.
He displayed obsessive-compulsive tendencies and had developed a fixation for pigeons.
Yeah, and the number 3.
And the number 3, yes, that's the next sentence. Drew.
Sorry.
He would rescue and rehabilitate pigeons and sort of take care of them in his New York apartments.
Married one of them.
His germophobia worsened. Yeah, he developed a particular obsession with this one particular pigeon.
Can't remember the name, but he gave it a name.
Yeah, and he said once that he saw some kind of radiant purple light coming out of its eyes or something.
Holy shit, really?
Then he knew, as he was looking at it, then he knew that his life's work was done. Like he said, he completed whatever he was supposed to do, basically.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah. But his mind wasn't completely gone. He did postulate the prospect of radar technology.
Yes, and he invented radar the way that Da Vinci invented the helicopter.
Kind of, yeah, basically.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't invent it. He came up with the concept of it that eventually people would use to build it.
And drones, as we sort of mentioned earlier, well before they were developed.
Oh, yeah.
He was granted a patent for a VSTOL, which is a vertical short takeoff and landing aircraft.
Yeah, the Harrier, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Because in his words, basically, he's like, now if you can just
don't need a runway.
Rotate the you just rotate the engine. Yes, dude.
Point it down.
Point it
go
downward.
Up.
You
thrust.
Dipshits. Yeah.
Thrust.
Thrust.
He worked as a consultant, but his delivered plans were usually claimed to be impractical.
Yeah, well, that's only because dipshits are fucking trying to decipher it. I'm serious. Like,
it could be.
This isn't gonna work. Yes, because you don't have an IQ of like 255, dude. Okay.
Westinghouse continued to pay for his room and board for years.
Yeah.
So he was kind of grateful to Tesla.
After he skipped out on one high class like fancy hotel with like a $20,000
yeah,
bill,
I will mention. I believe that's the same one I will mention here in a minute. It's an interesting story.
I kind of feel like he was just like, yeah, well, people have fucked me over out of money too, so welcome to America, I guess.
When you become an American, you'll get the joke too.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Right?
Tesla reportedly worked on some kind of particle beam defense weapon, dubbed the death beam.
Yes.
He opposed the term death ray. He wanted it to be called a death beam.
Really?
I don't know.
So I heard. I actually don't know.
He claimed it would, quote, cause armies of millions to drop dead in their tracks and, quote, bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 250 miles.
Jesus.
Yeah. So this particle beam weapon reportedly would accelerate mercury particles at 48 times the speed of sound inside of a vacuum chamber and then shoot them out with incredible force.
Word.
He tried to sell this idea to the Allied nations when the whole Third Reich thing was happening.
You know, that old chestnut.
Even J.P. Morgan Jr., because Tesla, he hated war. He basically wanted to make a weapon that he thought would end all wars.
Right, which is kind of ironic.
Eventually, he realized that wasn't going to work, but Anyway, back to the story.
Human beings like to fight each other, so it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, he even tried to sell it to J.P. Morgan Jr., but nothing fruitful came from it. It was never, successfully built.
Yeah.
Or so we thought.
Right.
Tesla once told a reporter that someone broke into his apartment, but since he keeps critical details in his head, the weapon was safe. Which I actually am sort of inclined to believe.
Yeah, they actually took a bunch of his shit out of his safe, and a bunch of the stuff that he was like, well, it doesn't matter because I have all the good shit up in my head, so it's totally fine.
He's got the plutonium in his brain.
Exactly.
Oh, you got to rocket, bitch.
That's what, whoop-de-doo.
So he eventually sent out a technical paper to several countries, just urging them to be like, dude, we need this because shit's about to get fucked.
Right? This is like 1938 or whatever, the crest, the pre-crest of the fascist movement in Germany.
Some have linked his designs to the particle beam weapons that were eventually developed by the U.S. and the Soviet Union in the Cold War. He once gave a working model contained in a wooden case. Contained in a wooden case to a hotel manager for collateral.
Yes.
They were instructed to never open it because, of course, it was super dangerous.
Totally.
Right? After his death, it was opened and contained just simple, harmless electrical components
like
some
a couple of fucking
and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Did a couple of fuses and some wires. Like, fuck you. Here you go. What are you gonna know, dude? You don't know shit, dude. You're an idiot, dude. Like, fucking death ray with the R backwards and shit, dude. Death ray. Here you go. Fuck you. Take your money, you cocksmucker.
Fun fact, Tesla also speculated on peacetime uses for the death beam, such as energy transmission.
Right.
Which is pretty wild.
Right.
Just shoot energy.
Wireless energy transmit, shoot it across the Atlantic. Power up England.
And a man-made Aurora Borealis, basically.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Or, just weather manipulation or something.
That doesn't happen, Marcus.
Fun fact, Tesla once claimed he had a handheld oscillator that could destroy the Empire State Building.
That's what I was talking about with Mark Twain. Right. Yes, exactly. He apparently turned that on and was like, check this out, dude. And freaking the apartments below him were being destroyed basically. Yeah. And then he had to destroy it with a sledgehammer, and the cops showed up and they were like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, it's all good. I turned it off. It's
just
cool.
experiments.
Relax, dude. It's fine.
Yeah. He also reportedly said at one point, here's Tesla's 80s movie, Epilogue. He died in January 1943, age 86, in debt.
Yeah.
His papers became the subject of a conspiracy, including Trump's uncle,
right? How
the
weird
Manhattan Project,
yep,
Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative.
But, that's a new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But officially, nothing came of them. The papers were sent to his nephew in Yugoslavia eventually.
Yugoslavia.
And put into a museum, though allegedly not all of his effects actually arrived.
Mm-hmm. There's speculation that the U.S. government was like, we'll just take a couple of those. Yeah. Well, no, that's steal, Marcus. Reappropriate. Come on. We have the authority to do that. It's not morally fucked up or anything to just completely hoard this guy's fucking genius inventions and use it for our own nefarious means. I mean, come on.
So, like I said before, the U.S. and the Soviet Union kind of experimented with that sort of technology in the Cold War. The U.S. eventually turned to lasers instead. Have you seen that video that they tested that laser weapon from the aircraft carrier?
No, you sent me that article and I read it, but I haven't seen a video.
Well, the video's not super telling because it's kind of hard to see what's happening.
Because lasers are invisible.
Right.
Yeah.
But
did I tell you that they do that though on the front of planes? They have big 747 style planes, big and on the front of the nose cone, instead of having a radar dish or whatever the fuck, they have this giant fucking device or whatever that peeks down and rotates, and so it's an eye that looks whatever, and it's basically a laser that shoots.
It's
projectiles.
Not a laser. It's a little light bulb that blinks.
Yeah. What's with him?
Laser envy.
That's so great. What's with him? Fucking laser envy. Right? Looking over fucking guy.
Hey, a laser. How come you don't have a laser, Russia?
We do have laser. It's big laser. It's better laser. We show you.
I pointed to Kitty.
Look, Kitty. No more Kitty. See, Kitty? Now no more Kitty.
That's not even where I was going
It's
with
good.
that.
I don't know.
Anyway, the FBI declassified 250 pages of Tesla's documents in 2016.
Took them long enough.
Right. After people lost interest.
Yeah, you're right, dude.
During the middle of the election, probably.
Yeah, right, dude. After all of his inventions and stuff have been just taken and capitalized, oh yeah, here we'll release this. Fuck you guys. It's been 40 years. Fuck off.
And 2 additional releases thereafter. but some of Tesla's files are reportedly still missing. Okay, but that's a pretty sour note, so let's go into some good news here.
Yeah, let's end on a sweet note there, Marcus.
So in 2012, a crowdfunding campaign called Let's Build a Goddamn Tesla Museum.
Awesome.
That's the title.
Right.
Raised enough money, along with a matching grant from New York State, to buy the Wardenclyffe property.
Cool.
And so they're trying to establish the Tesla Science Center on its grounds.
Awesome. Is that still going on?
Yep.
Sorry.
In 2018, it was added to the National Historic Register with a record number of nominations.
Fuck yeah, dude. Good.
So they've got some pretty grand ambitions for that site.
That poor guy, dude. I mean, I'm glad he's finally getting some recognition.
It sucks that it didn't happen in his lifetime.
Yeah, dude. And what sucks is that that's almost pretty typical for like every genius. Every artistic genius of any kind usually is way ahead of their time. You know what I mean? And it's lame, dude, that this dude didn't get any recognition till like years after he died.
People pimp him out and profit off him. And
yeah, man. It's a bummer, dude, because everybody knows Edison. They're wrong. Edison was a highly inventive individual.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's fine. Good for you.
He's a piece of shit, but he did invent some good things.
You're a piece of shit for stealing that stuff, dude, okay? Like, you were so insecure about your own genius.
You were the chosen one.
Right, dude? You could have bet balance to the boss. And
you were supposed to bring light to the world, not leave it in darkness.
You were supposed to bring light to the world's fair, not smother it in darkness. Yeah, dude, for real. And it's a bummer, dude, because I don't know. I'm kind of speechless, but it's just not right. And when I grew up, I heard everything about Edison. I didn't know anything about Tesla.
Yeah.
And I'd be telling my kids about that stuff, and I kind of got a little bit in trouble a couple of years ago when my middle kid fucking came home and was like, yeah, I got in trouble at school in my science class. I'm like, how come, dude? What happened? It's like, oh, just, I was talking to my teacher, and I was telling her about Tesla and stuff, and she got all upset at me. I'm like, what do you mean, dude? What do you mean she got upset with you or whatever? He's like, well, I told him, I was like, well, my dad says fucking Edison's a punk. And I guess I kind of got him in trouble or whatever because I was like, everything that Edison basically was like famous for, not everything, but all the main things that we freaking know Edison for, Tesla did 10 times better, dude. So, dude, it's a meritocracy, bro. Sorry, Edison. It's fucking sorry, dude, but you were not good enough, dude. Tesla was way better, and he should have gotten the kudos for it, and he didn't, and it's a historical travesty for sure. I feel like it's more of a meritocracy than it was before, but it was still plagued with the same bullshit that we're plagued with today.
You got Zuckerberg.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. I was Zuckerberging people before Zuckerberg dropped out of his dad's balls.
Do some good for the world.
Yeah.
Not just for yourself.
Yeah. We should all live the way Tesla tried to live, in the sense of like not compromising his integrity in order to make a profit. I feel like he was the type of guy who would much rather just improve the world. We all could use a lot of that mentality these days. Another fun fact, near the end of his life, Tesla was a proclaimed, thank you, was a self-proclaimed virgin.
Really?
Yes, never knowing the soft, warm
that
touch
makes
of
a lot of sense as to why he was able to actually invent things and think things, because his mind wasn't on pussy.
Right, for real, dude. He wasn't fucking distracted with the variances of freaking hunting down tail, which as once a young man, I can attest, takes up a lot of time to do that or whatever.
That's why he wasn't interested in money, because he wasn't interested in vagina.
For real. And God damn it, if I weren't interested in vagina, I maybe could have.
Could you imagine the things that we could do?
Things in my life. But I'm a greedy piece of shit that wants to get laid. So what do you want me to do?
Can you imagine how much vagina he would have gotten if he actually turned his mind to that?
Oh my God, right? If he actually just like leaned into.
I've invented this machine that will stimulate women from a distance of 30 feet away.
Actually, it oscillates at the frequency of orgasms.
I found the frequency of the clitoris.
It's not the brown note, it's the pink note. Bitches love it. Like, he was just like super like machismo asshole that was like slaying pussy, dude.
That's what his secret labs were for.
Right, dude. There's a bunch of fuck chambers and stuff. Like,
what do you think was inside that tower?
Right? Yeah, it's all for science, baby. Oh am I? What a pimp. See, he's just
You want to feel this electricity, baby?
You know what? You know what Tesla's problem was? He didn't have a manager, homie. He didn't have a fucking.
You need a hype man.
Yes, dude, because he wasn't a showman.
Yeah.
He was just a logistics guy.
He's the idea guy.
He was
yeah.
the idea guy, bro. He needed somebody, and that was his biggest flaw, homie. Is he didn't have somebody who knew the ways of American business, dude, and American like sensationalism and such a thing, right? Because again, he was in a completely foreign land, like obviously land because he immigrated here, but he was in a completely foreign like environment, dude, where he didn't the business environment, the capitalist business cutthroat dog eat dog environment, right?
Yeah.
And if he would have just had a fucking manager who knew the path that he needed to go through, a guide, right? A hype man to be able to be like, look, dude, let me show you all the things that you guys are missing out by not buying Tesla's like stuff or whatever. Because again, what we were saying with like the drone or any of the other technology that he developed, it was so ahead of his time that people had trouble grasping it, dude.
Right.
They had trouble understanding why the fuck they should care about this thing.
Yeah.
And if they had a hype man to kind of, focus the reason why he's inventing these things or whatever to kind of get certain people on board to finance his work or whatever, I think he wouldn't have died fucking penniless in an apartment where he stacked up a bunch of like bills and stuff like that or whatever and had basically no money to his name or whatever. Fucking disgrace for a genius of that caliber, dude, right? Yeah, dude, if he just like how different would history be, bro?
That's an interesting point.
If he ended up when he first got to America, or maybe after he got to America and then got fucked over by Edison, if he just met up with somebody, dude.
He needs a Don King.
For real, dude. What you have here, for real, is the rumble in the jungle. That man acts white, talks black, and thinks green.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's an interesting point. If Tesla had a marketing guy, a business
Honestly,
guy.
that was his only downfall, dude. He was an honest guy. He was a hard worker. He was completely original. He was just in the wrong environment, dude. He was.
He reminds me of more like an
ancient.
ancient Greek type of guy, like.
Yeah, like an altruist. Yeah, that like had certain beliefs and stuff like that, but wouldn't really work in this environment because de facto that's just not how it works or whatever. Not to not because it's like morally right or wrong or whatever, but just because it's fucking how it is, bro. Sorry. And it fucking kills me, dude, that everybody knows who Edison is.
Right.
It fucking kills me, dude. That bothers me so badly, dude. Because I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, Edison was a chump. He was a fucking chump compared to Tesla, dude. No, don't get me wrong. Not a chump compared to me. I'm a dipshit. He invented tons of shit or whatever, made a bunch of money or whatever. But that doesn't excuse the terrible, like, business practices, to say it mildly, that he, did with Tesla. He fucking ran him out on a rail, basically, dude. You know what I mean? And not because his product
was better.
Edison's product was better, but because Edison was a better showman. Because Edison knew the landscape better, the political, social, economical, whatever the fuck,
psychological.
Landscape. Yes, dude. And that's why his smear campaigns worked. But again, Tesla wouldn't be fucking caught dead doing that type of underhanded, shady shit or whatever. But because of that, he lost the battle, dude. And it's one of those things of like, do you die the hero or do you live long enough
to see yourself become
the villain? Tune in next week.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Right on. Well, thank you for joining us with this. I think this was our first biography. Yeah. And I liked it. I think Nikola Tesla is a perfect first candidate for this kind of our run and of a style of the podcast that we're doing or whatever, because I don't think there's only a few other people, like individuals, who hold such a high... Yes. Well done. It's amazing what you find face to face.
Do you enjoy the show and want to help it grow? Don't hesitate. Like, share, and donate.
At the end of the podcast, we'll just... Fuck it.
It's just fucking...
No one's listening anyway. They all tuned out by the 20th. Started going off on AC power.
Yeah, right. They all tuned out fucking after the first 10 minutes when we weren't going to be talking about porn.
There's no boob. I saved you 2 long boobless hours.
It's just sled. There you go. I just saved you 2 long boobless hours. Yeah, apparently I got in trouble at the movie rental place for recording over the movies. So I guess, I don't know. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Bye.